So, welcome back to Mixtapes to Myself. Again, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you. For those of you who have been following this journey, thank you, thank you, thank you. Those of you who have been following this journey are mostly my best Moroccan friends who you are the best. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all showing up. Uh, Please remember, like and subscribe. I forgot to say that in the last videos. I'm just gonna put it somewhere. It'll be fine. Um, please remember, like and subscribe. Please share. Share this with people. It's a delightful story, and it only gets weirder from here. It's a tale of love and tragedy and heartbreak and sadness and death. So please, again, share. Share it with your friends. Share it with everybody. Thank you so much. All right. Now, on to today's chapter. We have chapter 13, Records and Rationalizations. Sam's alarm went off, playing the radio station she always set it to, and her arm shot out on instinct and slapped the off switch on top. She laid there quietly, with her eyes closed for quite some time before she opened them. She looked around her room and felt the distinct change from how it felt yesterday. She glanced sleepily at her bedside table and saw her little pink phone. The sight caused her fist to ball up in triumph, and she said quietly to herself, "Yes." So she was back home again. There was momentary relief, but then she realized that she had complicated everything by kissing Jacob last night. She should feel absolutely terrible, but all she could do was replay that moment in her head again and again. He was sweet. He was kind. He had been so romantic. And he would be hers in the future. Possibly, she said out loud to herself. This brought a whole new layer of complications to the surface. She knew that she would be getting a different version, but she desperately needed to speak to Nick. She picked up her phone and looked at the date and realized that it was May 17th, making it a Monday. Shit, I have school, she said to herself as she shot out of bed. She was at her closet in a flash, trying to figure out what to wear while processing what today was going to bring. Luckily, her and Ben attended different schools, so at least she didn't have to deal with that immediately. She had a little space to figure out how to handle everything. Plus, she would see Nick at school, and she could ask him about yesterday, both his time spent with her younger self and get him up to date on what happened to her in the future timeline. She was almost dizzy at the number of gears that seemed to all be moving at the same time, and worried that one cog in the works could somehow explode the whole machine. She looked in the mirror, assessed her outfit, and said, "Good enough," as she grabbed her purse and her book bag and walked out of her bedroom door. She was downstairs in less than 15 minutes, and she had at least 30 minutes until she usually left. She liked to get to the school early because something about the nearly empty hallways and watching the school fill up brought her peace. She grabbed one of their many travel mugs and made her morning coffee before sitting at the kitchen table and sipping it quietly. She heard her dad's feet coming down the stairs, and she grabbed him a mug and poured him a coffee before his feet touched the living room floor. "Your coffee's on the counter," she said, smiling at her father. She heard the mmm as he took his first sip, let it settle into his consciousness, and said, "Thanks so much, sweetheart." He looked around and said, "Your sister's not up yet?" Sam sighed and rolled her eyes a little bit. "No, is she ever up on time?" Her mom had started a new job and had been working morning shifts, and her dad had swapped to second shift. So he was on morning duty to make sure the girls were up and out for school. Sam usually drove herself, but there was a rule that if Ren wasn't up on time, she had to take the bus. Ren was almost never up on time. So, quick author's note. One of the things that was said in this chapter that relates Sam to me personally, I loved going to school early. I liked to be first in the building. I was usually the last one out at night. I did every extracurricular known to mankind. Like, it was actually kind of baffling. There was one year, I think it was my sophomore year, that I stopped doing field hockey to do swim team, but I was doing like swim team, marching band, and then like three other clubs. And that was also the year that like I ended up doing I ran for vice president of my class against one of the most popular people in my grade, and I hilariously won by a landslide. Um, my campaign slogan was "Vote for the underdog," with a bunch of quotations from like famous underdogs throughout history. So I guess I've always been this much of a nerd. But yeah, it's less so now. Now I try not to show up at the crack of dawn for no reason to whatever. But when I was in school, I was first one in. When I went to college, I was there usually 8:30 in the morning because I commuted from my hometown to Boston to Suffolk University. And so I would take like the 6:30 train or some crap. So I would be in as early as possible, grab myself some breakfast, make sure I was prepped and ready, go to my work study job. When I worked at my first school, I was literally the first person in, last person out. They actually made a rule because I used to stay so late that you had to be out. You had to be out by 6 p.m. because sometimes I would stay there until like 8 o'clock at night, and the cleaning ladies would have to be like, "Girl, you gotta go." So to me, there's something about like being in an empty space to just like gather your thoughts. And I think a lot of it is I don't love crowds, like crowded places, lots of people makes me super uncomfy. So I think me showing up early was me like mentally preparing for the nonsense that I had to deal with in high school. But I would be there as soon as the doors open. Sometimes I'd be standing there like while the janitor opened the door and be like, "Hey." Um but yeah, early to school, 100% true. I liked being early, and I would like get all my stuff ready and then sit on a specific spot and just hang out and watch as like the people started filtering in and whatever. But 100% true. All right, back to the story. Sam trudged up the stairs to her sister's room and knocked on the door gently at first, and then progressively harder and with more fervor. "Ren, are you up?" she shouted through the cheap wooden door. "I'm leaving in 20, so if you want to ride, you better hustle." She heard the moans of her sister finally pulling herself out of bed, and she walked back downstairs to brush her teeth and do a last-minute check that she looked all right. Her dad was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee. "Did you get her up?" He was almost laughing when he said it. Her sister was historically difficult to wake up in the mornings. She had also inherited most of the stubborn gene from both sides of their family, and it seemed like if she didn't want to do something, there was no way she was going to do it. This included being ready so she could get a ride to school. She made noises like an angry dragon, so I assume she's conscious, Sam said as she walked to the bathroom and started brushing her teeth. She heard footfalls on the stairs and knew that she had at least triumphed once today, and her sister was awake. Sam left the toothbrush hanging from her mouth and walked over and made her sister a quick cup of coffee, knowing that the faster she got caffeine into her, the more likely she'd be ready to get ready on time. Her sister took the mug gratefully, and Sam went back to brushing her teeth. When she had finished, she shouted to her sister, "I'm leaving in 10, so if you want to ride, you gotta go get dressed." Mm. Her sister grunted in acknowledgement and trudged back up the stairs. Sam went back to the kitchen table and double-checked her bag, confirmed that she had all the books she needed, and that her binder was there. Her daily planner was tucked in the front where it always was, and she double-checked her phone was fully charged, and she had everything she needed in her purse. She pulled her keys out and placed them next to her stuff, ready to run out the house any minute now. Run came down the stairs, and Sam thought for a second that she would actually make it on time. But then she started pouring herself a bowl of cereal. "Ren, I'm leaving like now. Do you want a ride to school or are you going to take the bus?" Sam asked, a tinge of irritation in her voice. Ugh, I hate taking the bus. The bus stop is so far, she said, and Sam fully rolled her eyes now. The bus stop wasn't even 500 feet away from the house, but she knew exactly how this was going to go. Her sister looked at her father and asked sweetly, "Dad, can you drive me to the bus stop?" Sam looked at her father, who looked like he would say no, but then immediately caved and said that yes, he would drive her to the bus stop. Sam was watching this with a level of astonishment that she didn't know could exist in one person. Her sister still looked slightly sad, and her dad suddenly said, "If I'm getting in the car anyways, why don't I just drive you to school?" It was like watching a magic show with a real magician who was literally making rabbits disappear and reappear in thin air. It was like seeing a unicorn and a dragon flying through the air. It was like watching someone on the high wire who was also somehow juggling, riding a bicycle, and balancing a sword on their nose. Sam was flabbergasted, but somehow not at all surprised. She rolled her eyes as her sister went to put her bowl in the sink. "You know she just played you, right?" she said to her dad. He shrugged and took another sip out of his coffee. Sam sighed, kissed her dad on the cheek, shouted bye to her sister, and walked out the house. She threw her stuff in the passenger seat of her '88 Oldsmobile 88 and jumped in the driver's seat. It was a genuine boat of a car, which they had nicknamed the Steel Cage of Doom. It wasn't pretty, but it ran, and it was hers. She was still shaking her head, incredulous at the sorcery her sister had just pulled on their father. Author's note. And this is one of my favorite author's notes because this is absolutely stacked in reality. The 88 Oldsmobile. I loved that car. God, I loved that car. I loved that car so much. It was like a burgundy, but like all the shellac was gone or whatever you call it that makes the car shiny. So it was just like flat burgundy because it was so old. And the material on the top of the car, like on the ceiling, had like separated from the foam, so it hung down. So we had to figure out and buy like wooden slats to like fit into the plastic to keep it up. And that thing was absolutely a steel cage of doom. I got into just a fender bender. It was really basic. I was young. I was like 16, 17 when I got this car. And there was a really bad merge in Lowell. Like it was right near the train station. Really bad merge. And it was really hectic. And this woman came in front of me, and I was trying not to get hit from behind. And she stopped, and I couldn't stop in time, and I hit her. We pulled into the train station. Her bumper, and she was in like an Explorer, or the one that was bigger, like a huge SUV. Her bumper was underneath her car, completely crushed. The only damage to my car was there was a little plastic piece that had cracked a little. This thing literally could have been in like a derby and like won. Like it was, oh, I loved that car so much. And it had in the back, because it was like a huge sedan from the 80s. In the back, it had like a shelf in front of the back windshield. So there was just a shelf. And I happened to have like weird snap, crackle, and pop bobbleheads, the Rice Krispies guys. And so one Christmas season, I literally like created a Christmas like menagerie with my snap, crackle, and pop with little Santa hats on and drove around town like that. I loved that car so much. Hands down, one of the favorite of my many cars, because I've had way too many. It was one of my favorite cars of all time. It might be the top. I had so many good times in that car. I loved that car. I loved that car so much. And yes, its nickname was the Steel Cage of Doom. That is also true. Anyways, back to the story. Soon, she was pulling into her spot and walking into the mostly empty school. Another reason to be there early was to get a good spot in the lot affectionately known as the pot lot. She giggled at the memory of her vice principal trying to make an excuse that it was called that because of the many potholes that had been filled in over the years. She walked into the front doors of the school and waved at her favorite janitor, a tall, skinny man named Brian, who always had a smile and a hello for her. Walking towards her locker, she was making plans to hunt Nick down before classes started when she saw him there, standing next to her locker. "Sam!" he shouted and started running towards her as soon as he saw her face. She stopped in her tracks, and he stopped just short of her. He looked at her as if he were inspecting her face to see any changes, and he repeated, "Sam?" but with a question in his tone. "Hey," she said. "Yeah, it's me." And before the words had finished leaving her mouth, he had picked her up in a hug and twirled her around, which was not an easy feat, as Sam wasn't exactly a lightweight. "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened yesterday," he said as he put her back on her feet. "I bet you that I can," she said, and he cocked an eyebrow intrigued. Nick had explained that her 12-year-old self had been there yesterday, but before he could finish his story, she pulled out the cassette tape out of her purse and waved it in front of his face. "I know," she explained. "She left me this when she got back, and it's been in my drawer since 1999. Nick's eyes were the size of saucers. He reached out and took the tape from her hands, turning it over and over again, as if inspecting the flimsy plastic case or the messily written label would somehow bring more clarity to this situation. He finally looked back up at her and his mouth opened to utter something, but Sam couldn't wait. I was in 2008, she said, as she started walking towards her locker. Half of her was excited to tell him all about it, and half of her was trying desperately to forget it. As she walked away, Nick leaned on the wall for a second, as if he needed to catch his breath. And then he walked after her, sputtering, but not quite completely making a whole sentence. So was I? How old? 21. Who else? Oh man. Oh man. Oh man, he said with the excitement rising in his voice. But then the excitement escaping his face before he uttered another word. But we can't. Oh man. He was mainly talking to himself now. Nick, were you going to complete a sentence and fill me in, or just make sounds for the rest of the day? She said. She was looking at her schedule and packing her first 2-period books into her bag as she said this. Even if everything seemed to be on fire, she still had to go to class and pretend that she was normal. Yeah, sorry. Oh man, he said, and again, and Sam gave him the most irritated side eye she could muster. Sorry. So, he continued, trying to process his thoughts out loud in full sentences this time. So you went forward to 2008, and 1999 went forward to now. Sam nodded. Hummed in agreement. So where did 2008 go? And that's the question of the hour, she said as she shut her locker door and walked towards her classroom. As they made their way down the hall, she explained what had happened, sans the romantic entanglement, because she wasn't sure if she could tell anyone about that. Nick posited that 2008 also jumped to the future and started talking about the theory behind it. So assuming that 1999 jumped here and 2004 jumped to 2008, 2008 must jump somewhere else in the future. But then that one must jump further forward to, he was making a motion with his hands like a game of leapfrog. Yeah, so the biggest question in my mind is, where does it end? She said to him. There was genuine worry in her voice. She was concerned that if everyone kept jumping, at some point, she wouldn't have anywhere to jump. And then what happens to her consciousness? It was all way too much for her 17-year-old brain to handle at the moment. As they walked closer to the classroom and more people started filling in the hallway, she turned to Nick to say one last thing. Listen, this all seems to be way above anything that I can handle right now. And anyways, it's done. It's done now. I won't jump again until 2008. So for now, I just need to keep living my life. I can't let this control everything, she said. She went to walk into the classroom, but he grabbed her arm lightly. She turned, and he was still holding the tape. You should record another one. Record exactly what happened to you in 2008, down to the last detail you can remember. No one but you will listen to it, but at least you'll have a record of everything that happened. So in 2008, when this comes up again, you will be ready for it. He said all of this with a seriousness in his voice that Sam didn't usually hear from him. There was a level of concern in there and a levity to his tone. She nodded very seriously in agreement. I'll record it as soon as I get home tonight, she said. The warning bell rang, and Nick nodded, and then grinned and saluted her, and turned to run to his own class. She shook her head and laughed before turning and walking to her seat. She couldn't focus on anything today, with everything spiraling around in her mind. She at least had Nick there to help her try to figure this out, but she still had to figure out what to do about Jacob. Suddenly, she realized she didn't even know Jacob yet. She hadn't met him until she started working at the bakery. She realized she had never seen him before she met him yesterday. So clearly he didn't go to her school. She didn't even know his last name. She made the decision then that she would let her and Ben's relationship run its natural course. He never had to know that she had kissed another boy. After all, there had to be some rule about extenuating circumstances and time-traveling kisses, right? Sam, are you all right? And Sam nearly jumped at the sound of her own name. She hadn't been paying attention in the slightest, and her teacher, Senora Delord, looked concerned. Sí, señora, estoy perfectamente bien, she said. She made the decision to put this all out of her mind until she got home and recorded the tape. That would be the only record of her kissing Jacob until it actually happened in 2008. And with that, Sam left her time-traveling worries behind and instead focused on her worries of verb conjugation en español. Now, I'm not going to say her name, but because this is a fictional character in the book, but she is technically based on a true person that I wanted to include because she was one of my favorite teachers of all time. I love her so much. Shout out to Senora. Oh, we went through it. She was also our advisor for student council. So we spent a lot of time together trying to plan out the junior prom. And she is a champion. Haven't seen her in probably like 20 years. Still a champion to this day. I can guarantee it. She is dope, dope human. So if this ever finds you, Senora, thank you for everything. We love you. So the other day, I completely forgot to do the sign off section of the recording. And unfortunately, my studio is ocupado. I'll show you very quickly. As you can see, Seiji is way too comfortable. There's no way I could kick him out. You can see Teddy hanging out in the background. And the boys are fast asleep. So here we are. So Sam, unfortunately, is now in the complicated predicament of dealing with the fact that she has kissed another boy and she liked it, but has made the decision to kind of see through this relationship and kind of ignore the time traveling bits that she's been a part of. Next week, as we move forward in the story, we are going to be introduced to 2008 Sam, as she's supposed to be. And we're going to discover where she jumps to. So stay tuned next week when, again, we fast forward to 2008 and we see where the time traveling journey takes us. If you haven't already, please check out the playlists Uh, this book is called Mixtapes to Myself, so I've physically created mixtapes for each section that we travel to. So far, there are side A and side B of 1999. Granted, there are way more songs than you could fit on a mixtape, but I think that's part of the fun. And again, I tried to stay historically accurate. I tried to make sure that, the songs were around during that time. I'm sticking to the year. So if they weren't around in May, they might have been released in like October. Who knows? It was very difficult because some of the songs were non negotiable. They meant too much and I loved them too much. But please check out the playlists. They're really cool. I put a lot of thought into them because a big part of this and a big part of the nostalgia of writing this book was thinking back to specifically the music that each iteration of Sam might have listened to and what I actually did listen to. So go ahead, check those out. Again, we will be back next week, 7 p.m. Moroccan time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Thursday, same times, the Wattpad, the new chapter will be released. And again, we're moving forward in time as we have been. So you're going to see a completely different version of our character. Somebody who is in college, who is 21 years old, who is exploring the world around her and trying to figure out kind of what to do with her whole life. Because realistically, that's the age when you start saying, what am I going to do when I grow up? So please stay tuned. For those of you who have joined us, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you who are just joining us now, I appreciate you being here. Again, this is a passion project more than anything. And this whole project is just me trying to spread a little sunshine and put stories out there that might make you laugh, might make you sad, might make you think. But all of those things are super important. Um, thank you all for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe. I appreciate all of the support. It really means the world to me. And like I say every week, remember, be kind, be good. Remember to spread a little sunshine this week, and we'll see you next week. All right. Love y'all. Thank y'all for being here, and I will see you next week. All right. Bye. For the record, that's not just when I'm recording. That's just like me in general. You should see me walk around this house. I also have full conversations with my cats because, again, I live alone in McNess with 4 cats. Other than my shop people, I get very little human contact. I sing a lot to myself. I make up songs about stupid stuff, like all the time. Blah, blah.
Hi. You want to come say hi?
A little side project.
Blue Blue. You want to say hi?
Don't know what's so fascinating about my sweatshirt, but okay.
Hi, beautiful girl.
Pretty, pretty princess. What's up? You can come hang out with me while I record.
You want to come hang out?
Blue, blue. That's my baby.
I love you. You're so handsome. Because girls can be handsome too. Don't let anybody tell you different. And boys can be pretty. Right, Teddy? Because Teddy is a pretty, pretty boy.